everybody. Welcome to our ARIA, Canada, right? Because we have Vancouver and Toronto chapters. We joined together and have this great events to all the realtors, like BC or within the ARIA family. Or if you're not ARIA family yet, join us afterwards, okay? So first of all, we would like to, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm tinamak from Coldwell Banker. I've been in the business in Vancouver since 1992. So ARIA Vancouver's founding president. So I'm gonna, let it go to Stephen Chow. Stephen, who are you?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Iven Tse. I'm the president currently for the ARIA Toronto chapter, and I'm actually also a Century 21 owner in Canada, in Toronto, one of the second largest owner and president of the company. And today in Toronto, we have a few of our board of directors following us. Winston Chan, it's a part of our board of vice president. Shirley Yee is part of the Toronto board as well, and she's be talking today with Iven. I'll pass it back to you, Tina.
Okay, so we have our board here. Obviously, Sadi Minachi is our current president, and then we have Lisa here, and then Monica, Dennis. Thank you for everybody, to help out with all this. And so that now we just did the shout outs to the Americans, the leaders. So now I would like to have James Wang, our national president, to just do a little bit of the ARIA commercial, okay, if you allow us to do that. Okay.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Stephen. And thank you, Sadi, for putting this all together. Hello, ARIA Canada. We from ARIA, the US, just your neighbors on the South, have not forgotten about you, and we actually were looking so forward to seeing everyone at the Global Luxury Summit. Would have been a couple weeks, but now we're going to be doing it virtually, so hopefully everyone will be able to attend. It is free for members, but if you join right now, it's less than $25. It's $24.75.
I know.
You can see a fabulous virtual program on April 29th, starting at 12 o'clock PST time. And we have a great speaker list going over luxury, going mortgage, talking about commercial. We will have Andrew Yang, one of the first Asian presidential candidates speaking. NAR's president, Vince Malta, will be on. So a fabulous group. So I encourage everyone in Canada to virtually get on to the Global Luxury on April 29th. So It's very exciting. And on the commercial end, we will have the CCIM national president, our global president, Eddie Blanton, speaking. We will have a representative from ICSC. So if everyone's curious about what is going on in retail, right? Everyone is like wondering what's going on, what are the changes? We will have representatives from ICSC. Also, somebody from, Rick Sharga from auction.com. He worked for 10X. A good person to talk about distress, auction, what's happening on in the economy when it comes to opportunities that could be happening in this market. So I'm really excited for the virtual Global Luxury, and I definitely am welcoming my ARIA Canadian family to be involved and join ARIA and belong to our big family that we have. And I know everyone here, we just care about each other. It's really important that we all stay connected, like with the high tea event. This is what ARIA is all about, is
family.
The family aspect. So I really encourage everyone, stay connected, be involved, and join ARIA, and you will find this big family environment. I know many on here, boy, we've been seeing each other more than ever now that there is no no geographic location. We can just jump on. I know Winston and many of us, Tina, and many. Oh, we are just seeing each other nonstop. I think we're seeing each other like every day now.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So hopefully everybody have their tea ready so that cheers.
Cheers.
Here you go. Thank you. So our high tea time. Gonna start with the two wonderful lawyers, Iven Tse is from Vancouver, and Shirley Yee is from Toronto. And then we're gonna go through a lot of, like questions that a lot of us, we actually want to know. And so Iven and Shirley, do you want to just have a 1-minute introduction of yourself so that we can get into the meat?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks everyone. Thanks for attending. I know that it's tough for everybody out there, and I'm appreciative of AREA organizing this for all of us. My name is Iven Tse. I'm a lawyer. I've been doing real estate law for 26 years. I do both commercial and residential, so purchases and mortgages, financing, development, litigation as well, and helping with corporations and doing investments as well as partners investing in real estate. So thank you very much.
Great. So Shirley, please.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you for welcoming us into your respective living rooms, bedrooms, offices, wherever you are. My name is Shirley Yee. I am a lawyer practicing in Ontario, more specifically in the GTA area for the last 33 years, with a strong emphasis on real estate. Now, a lot of folks think that I'm from Singapore, and I'm Singaporean, but I'm really not. I was born in Hong Kong, immigrated to Canada in the 60s, and I've been here ever since. And I look forward to sharing with everyone all our experiences and whatnot right now.
Okay, great. So let's get started. So everybody is now at home. That's why we can do all this Zoom meetings. So the first question is that during this COVID-19 state of emergency, we are semi-lockdown, okay? Some places lockdown, some places are semi-lockdown situation, but our real estate is still considered as the essential service. So can Iven and Shirley let us know that in Ontario and in Vancouver, what is open and what is not open, and how does this interrupt our transactions, things like that? So Iven, would you like to start?
Yeah, so in BC, the real estate industry is still considered an essential services. Lawyers, real estate agents, the land title office, everything is still open. There's all these cautions in terms of social distancing rules. So a lot of lawyers have a lot of protocols in place and how to operate remotely and how to see clients by video conference. There are all of these things that I can talk about later, but all that's open. When it comes to real estate, you have to know in BC, there are some things that are really harder than ever before. For example, if you have real estate deals that needs a court order sale, if you have a foreclosure action on behalf of a client, foreclosures, all these court proceedings, any land related deals that has to relate with the court, that's suspended. That is, the courthouse has only capacities for urgent matters, in which a lot of these real estate deals are not considered urgent in the eyes of the Supreme Court and the court services here in BC. So you have anything dealing with it. However, in litigation, there are some courts that are held by video conference, which is still operable. The Civil Resolution Tribunal in BC can hear strata disputes. They can still do everything remotely. They've always been doing that on video conference. We have small claims court deals. If it relates to real estate, up to a maximum dollar figure of $5,000. That's still done by the Civil Resolution Tribunal, and that's all done by video conference. Another question is about when it comes to real estate, limitation periods. Builders lien act for anyone dealing with constructions. Limitations are not suspended because they can still be filed and without having to actually attend and appear in court. So anything that you can file, you can still file. You just can't attend to court to get a judge to hear applications and give and grant order. That's a good rundown of one more thing, residential tenancy board, they're still open for urgent matters, but in a lot of cases that we can talk about this later on, when it comes to cases where you have a purchase and sale contract completing and there's a tenancy and the requirement is to give vacant possession. The tenancy board is still open. I can talk a little bit more about that. You make an application, but there's other issues about, well, what if you do? What can you do about it? So we can talk about that a little bit more, but those are our basics in terms of the real estate industry, construction workers. Construction is still considered an essential service. So supply is still coming into the system. The demand is still there. The closing procedures is causing a lot of problems. We can talk about that, but everything is still in business for real estate, except for the caveat, everybody's taking precautions. Open houses, there's the idea of having many people at a house, not a good thing. There's advisory for the real estate industry in BC to not conduct open houses. do what you can to do, market your product through virtual means. But so far, limit the numbers of people at a time into open house if you do decide to do so.
Great.
Yeah.
So now everybody, if you would like to have, ask any questions, please write on the chat. And then we will, now let's go to Shirley. What's open in Ontario and what's not?
Well, I would like to ditto what Ivan has said. It's almost identical. The only major difference here is that the landlord and tenant tribunal, that's closed. So for all intents and purposes, there are no evictions based on non-payment of rent. But for other issues dealing with safety or any illegal activities, the board is still holding virtual hearings. So I think that's the major difference. Other than that, it is for real estate anyways, and also the essential service of practice of law is basically business as usual, but under very unusual circumstances that we're practicing in right now.
So when we're talking about unusual practicings, can you share with us that, like how are you going to do signing? Is it electronic signing? Do you have to still see each other's like in the balcony, hi, or through a balcony, through underground parking, whatever? Okay, so Ivan, would you like to kickstart that?
Yeah, it's been very interesting. During the last 3 or 4 weeks since the pandemic was declared in British Columbia, as things progressed, things were done differently, and the Land Title Office and the Law Society, with the courts, they developed different protocols as the situation progressed. At the very beginning, they were only allowing counterpart signatures for different land title documents. So counterpart means I sign my side, the other side signs theirs, we put it back together, so we're not passing sheets back and forth. We can still do the signing, but it still has to be in person. You still have to see the person who's signing the document. And I've done these for, depending on the accommodation to my clients, that I know a lot of good parking lots all throughout the lower mainland. We meet on our cars, we do dashboard signings, we have people in their houses looking outside, setting a table. We open the trunk of the car, they sign, they leave everything there. We don't open the package till the next day, but I videotaped everything. We still follow the client identification rules. They stand there, they hold up their IDs, I take a video, I look at they take off their masks. We do all these kinds of things to protect. I have clients that are okay with coming to my office. I sterilize everything down, we wear our masks, we stay on opposite ends of the boardroom, we sign. We do that as usual, but it's been very difficult. And a lot of clients, especially when they're elderly, they don't want to leave the house, period. Not even in their cars, not even in the parking lot. We've done this route where in BC, and it's allowed, I'm not sure about this is in Toronto, but we have something called an affidavit of execution. And I've done this for several meetings where the realtors, they are familiar with the client. They know them, they know their signatures. I do the video signing with my clients on video through Zoom, or WeChat, or WhatsApp. They know all the documents, they sign. There's a couple of documents they need to sign in front of me. They sign in front of me, but the realtor who knows the client, invariably there's been a few situations like that. I meet the realtor in person, maybe in our cars. It did happen a few times, sometimes in my office. But the realtors and the people who know the people who are signing, they sign an affidavit of execution, confirming that they are familiar with the person who signed, that it is their signature, and then identify them involved with age, and affidavit. And then we accept that at the Land Title Office. To this point in time, the Land Title Office still requires some in-person documents to be signed. For example, the transfers and the mortgage, and that's causing a bit of difficulty. I'm still waiting for it to be completely remote, but it hasn't happened yet.
So Shirley,
Yes.
how different is it in Ontario?
Yeah, we're a little bit lucky here in Ontario. Our signing procedures have been relaxed somewhat. Guidelines have been issued by our Law Society indicating that we can sign virtually. So there's no longer the need to have actual original documents. So most of my signing are conducted in 2 ways now, either by virtual. We can also swear declarations through virtual communications also. That's not an issue. For individuals who cannot handle the technology, we are still entertaining face-to-face signups, of course, with the requisite precautions. My clients will be requested to wear a mask, don gloves. We sanitize the areas that they have touched. We're very careful as to what documents they present to us. We enforce stringent hand washing, the whole 9 yards. So in Ontario, in effect, it's actually made things a lot easier because I do have a lot of international clients, say from China, Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, and they've always requested virtual signing. And I was never able to accommodate them on that aspect. But now with the relaxation of the signing requirements, things have actually become a lot simpler on our end. Previously, we would require individuals to sign powers of attorneys, which will entail them to send us the originals. So with the ability to video sign, we don't need that anymore. So certain things have been streamlined, even though it appears to be a lot more complicated as we are working through the pandemic and the so-called the lockdown. We are finding video signing very easy to use.
Okay, thank you. I can just jump in here. There's a couple of questions that's been sent to me privately. Okay. One of the questions is to Shirley.
Yes.
In Toronto, most of the banks require the documents for closing to be a true copy. Banks do not allow virtual signing. How are we handling those on closing? Or has it been changed?
Yeah, I'm finding that a lot of banks are relaxing that requirement also. My concern is not so much for the regular banks. My concern are for the second tier mortgagees, the private mortgagees. They may want us to explain things personally to the clients. So before we even start, we will ask the mortgagees whether they're prepared to take video conferencing and explanations through this medium before we proceed. And if for whatever reason they're unable to accommodate us or they don't want to accommodate us, then we will fall back to the actual meeting with the clients, provided that they're also comfortable in coming out.
Okay, thank you. There's another question here, I guess to Iven or Shirley, or I guess Ontario, BC might be different. How about probate? So what's happening with probate at the signing parts?
So in BC, all court proceedings are suspended. You can still file. Like for probate applications, you can still file them. Affidavits can be signed. Assets and in terms of real estate that are indicated in the probate application, all that still can be filed. It's just the hearings. In probate in BC, you don't have to attend court to get probate orders done. Everything's done by affidavits, which there are virtual video signing protocols in place for affidavits, which is different than the land title office. When you get the court order from the probate office, you can use that as if it's a Form A, as if it's a transfer. So technically, there is no requirement to actually attend court for probate issues. But then if there is anything that needs to be spoken to in a probate application, such as a contested beneficiary, if the disposition of the real estate is going to be contested, that has to be postponed. So that can't be heard, and therefore no real estate in a probate application is actually transferred until that's resolved, and until the courts are reopened. And all the court cases that are existing in the system, it doesn't matter what, have been all adjourned. Now, if your case was set for April 3rd, for example, and May 17th, your hearing is going to be reset for another set date. So everything's postponed.
Yeah, it's very similar to the situation in Ontario. We wait about 6 to 12 months anyways for the probate applications to work itself through. So I basically tell my clients, just tack on a few months and continue to wait.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions, Stephen, on your end that related to this?
I think they answered most of it.
Okay, good. So let's go to the third questions that we all really matters immediately. Do you see, both of you see that a lot of the buyers, they're trying to back out using COVID-19 as an excuse? They say, oh, the market is going down. I try everything. So trying to back out, you know, things like that. So can Shirley start off?
Yeah,
Ontario?
yeah, absolutely. You know, in the times of COVID, everyone, there's a myth about this COVID. Everyone thinks because of the situation we're in, we can use COVID as an excuse to get out of our legal obligations. But that's not the case. When you sign an agreement of purchase and sale, it's a binding contract between two parties for consideration. There's meeting of the minds, and time is of the essence. So you can't just throw something like COVID and say, well, because of that, I'm not closing. Now, having said that, I received my first letter to request an individual to get out of a transaction, and the only excuse that they gave me was because of the virus. So in effect, you know, that's not a valid excuse to get out of a agreement of purchase and sale, which is still a valid contract that has to be fulfilled. So I think what's important is for agents to advise their clients that notwithstanding COVID, nothing really changes. Nothing really changes. And I think the reasons why you know, people think that they can is because all of these agreements were probably signed prior to COVID, and it's something new and unusual, and they think because of that, they can, for some reason, get out of their obligations.
So Ivan, do you see that in BC?
Yeah. So some of the cases that have occurred is that someone who lost their job and then therefore their mortgage is being pulled out and they can't get financing. And it was a subject that had been removed, and all of a sudden this hits, and they've lost their jobs, and then the lenders are reevaluating the credit worthiness, ability to handle the mortgage, and that's in jeopardy. A second thing that happened that I can talk about later, these are actual cases that I'm working with and working through the system as well, is that you have a sale that was subject to vacant tenancy, vacant possession on the completion date. The completion date is now going to be happening during the time in which there is a ban on any evictions. So the tenants are saying, hey, if I'm getting out of my house, I have nowhere to go and I can't find another place and I don't want to move. You can't make me move, and that's true. You can't make them move. And that's the issue right now. And then in a couple of cases that I'm dealing with right now, the most important thing to know is that, is this a reason to be able to say to anyone, hey, I can't give vacant possession, therefore we can't complete? That's not true. As Shirley had mentioned, these are binding contracts. There's a couple of concepts that I want to introduce to everyone if nobody's heard of it. It's the frustration of contract. And there's cases, case laws that deals with how to get out of contracts are binding. If there's an unforeseen event that comes up that prevents a contract from being enforced, there's questions about whether that applies or not. The other things we're seeing now, a lot of contracts that are coming in with COVID-19 clauses. In the event of this and this, and the subject and possession and completion dates are adjourned until X number of days after the pandemic has been ruled no longer a pandemic. Now, those issues are coming up. The two things I want to say about this issue and topic right now is the idea is frustration of contract. Can it or will it, or is there a way in which it could apply? Now, pandemics, well, traditionally and through the case law that you can find, it's not going to be a good enough reason. The reason is, under one of the main points of frustration of contracts is that if you had to enforce the contract, would the parties get what they had bargained for? So if the person who didn't want to buy was forced to buy, will they still get what they want if they actually bought? Yes, they get the contract, they get the property, they get what they had bargained for. The thing to make it easier to understand is a situation where you are forced to do something and what you get is completely different than what you had bargained for. And that's what the test is. It has to be a drastic change or difference between what you had bargained for as a result of that unforeseen event happening. And one of the things I might want to do is on the chat line, I'm gonna paste up a couple of cases that are in BC. People can look it up. They deal with these aspects of trying to break out of a contract, either rental tenancy problems, other financing problems, where all of a sudden they can't buy. So my advice as well, in addition to all of this, is just finding. You better find a way. If you can't get the financing, find a way to pool the resources and get people, family to help complete, because you are at risk if you can't complete, even if unforeseen events like this happen. One other point about frustration that I want to brought up is that idea that the unforeseen event has to cause something that's not temporary. We don't know whether it's temporary or permanent right now, but it's not sufficient enough proof and evidence right now to say that it is a permanent thing. Now, the flu has been around, the swine flu has been periodically, hasn't been eliminated, but neither has it become a part where it become a long-lasting and never-ending kind of health situation that affects workers and financing and completion.
So
Yeah.
Shirley?
Yeah, the only thing I would like to add to that is that, with frustration, not likely, not too much case law. The event must be such that the contract be rendered impossible to be performed. And like Ivan just said, even though you've lost your job, it's not impossible to come up with the funds through other means or through other sources.
I just think you have one example just to get the concept around it. And this is a complicated case, but I just want to sort of briefly talk about it. Where there was a contract for to buy this is a different contract, probably real estate related, but a contract to install windows on a wall. Okay. And then for $10,000, say for example. And then while they're doing it, they realize that the wall is a retaining wall. You can't build a window through the retaining wall. But if you build it, the whole place would fall down because it's a weight-bearing structure. And what you get is windows on the place that demolished because it all fell down as a result. That's something that's pretty extreme. But this idea is that if you actually enforce the contract with what you get at the end is what you didn't ask for. That's a good example of that. And it's not inconvenience. It's not more money. It's not takes more time. It's not cost more. It's not a reason.
Okay, great. Now we do. I quickly saw that one of our lenders is in this group right now. His name is Gunn. So he mentioned. I saw quickly that he said that there's other lenders is willing to do the funding. So maybe all of us should like if we encounter the situations, either find Guns on there, talk about that, or go back to your lenders and then find out the way to do the funding, right? So shall we move on to the
actually? Sorry, Tina, let me just jump in. There's a couple questions might be related to this.
Sure.
Right before close, there's a situation for one of our, sorry, let me just summarize this. More or less the question is saying, what happens before closing and there's final revisit or home inspection and the homeowner is sick and does not allow anyone to come in? Is that contract still enforceable to be closed on time or can it be delayed?
If you don't mind me, I'll just talk about that a little bit. Now, like visual inspections can still be done virtually. I mean, it's not to physically be there to look at it. You can even have a home inspector, because after all, it is a visual inspection. It's not busting through walls. It's not looking at inside whole, like the attics and things, but anything that can be visually seen. And you can have the visual inspection if needed. It's just not the physical one. To me, in my reading of the contracts, is not a reason to not complete. The idea of not having a physical inspection is not fundamental enough to not complete. So, yeah.
I tend to agree with Ivan. Unless the right for inspection is made an integral part of the agreement of purchase and sale, by the virtue of the fact that you cannot gain access for your final visitation, is not sufficient to not close. Practically, if both parties do want to close, you may consider a holdback. After the purchaser gains possession of the premises, if indeed there's something that's damaged or not quite right, then at least there's a holdback amount that you may be able to offset the repairs from.
So I have a question. Go back. So that is good for resale, but how about pre-sale? Final walkthrough. They're not allowed to go. How do you handle that?
Yeah, I would like to comment on that. In Ontario, we have something called the Ontario New Home Warranty Program. It's Tarion is their branded name, and Tarion provides in normal times, prior to occupancy, you must have a pre-delivery inspection between the purchaser and the builder, and it's at this time that you document all of the deficiencies, anything that's damaged, any little scratch, you put it all down, and these deficiencies will be honored by the builder to fix and repair after occupancy. Now, with the onset of the pandemic, that's no longer required. I know a lot of clients have come to me regarding this. They're saying, oh, well, Shirley, I can't do my walkthrough now. Can I delay my occupancy? No, you can't. And the reason is Tarion or the Ontario New Home Warranty Program has suspended that as a requirement for occupancy. So what will happen now is that the builder will do the walkthrough for you, and they will note down all the deficiencies, preferably backed up by video or pictures. And then when the buyer obtains occupancy of the unit, he or she will do what we call a delivery inspection. So it's no longer a pre-delivery inspection, it's a delivery inspection, again, backed up by video and pictures to ensure that if there are any damages, that it wasn't caused by the buyer.
Okay, so Ivan, BC similar or different?
I don't think BC had that requirement of that pre-delivery inspection to be eligible for the enrollment to the national home warranty system. That the program that operates here in BC, it doesn't apply. It didn't necessarily need that before. So in order to be eligible, so I think the whether there was a pre-inspection or post-inspection or delivery, that the program is still operative. The builder has to have that registered, they have the warranty in place, and afterwards, if there's any deficiencies, then it's been either covered or built or taken care of by the developer or through the warranty system.
Okay, so now I want to go to the resale. Go back to the resale. So when we have tenants in the property, like they're not willing to go. So the whole situations. How do we tackle that, Ivan, BC?
I think the first start to say is that is there an ability to say that your hands are tied because the law, it just came. The law came and says I can't force the tenants out. I promised, say for example, if you're a vendor, I promised to in possession. The buyer goes and says, hey, I need this place for my family. I can't have you have tenants in it. It's a breach of contract. So the first point is that it's not a frustration of contract provision. The idea is that tenants are there, but the law is only temporary. There's not going to be a permanent ban on tenants not being allowed to be evicted. Secondly, you can actually make an application to the Residential Tenancy Board here in BC for an order of possession. They can't be enforced until the ban is out, but as soon as the ban is out, then you can use that order of possession and actually do enforcement. So the enforcement of that tenancy eviction is only delayed for a little time until the emergency ban against eviction is gone. Thirdly, the idea is that because of that situation, the parties and I was listening to Shirley's ideas about holdbacks and all, that the parties have to be practical. The seller has to know that they are in breach and they can't get out of that breach. But the buyer also has to know that it's not the fault of the vendor. So at some point they have to come to an agreement, and both sides have to be reasonable. But the idea is that, and I'd like to bring up a third concept here. Before I talked about frustration of contracts, and and the idea of the requirements for it to be met. But one important thing too as well is the called mitigation. Now, this is the word that'll be tossed around when it goes to court. But the parties who had or potentially have suffered a loss, what steps did they take to mitigate their loss? And that has to be done. That's one of the principles. So if the buyer says, hey, I want this house for myself, and now that you don't have available to have the tenants out, I suffered loss and I want damages. Well, what is your loss? What is your compensation? If you decided to say, hey, you know what, I had this other place, I could have stayed there, but I moved out. Now I'm going to rent a really expensive apartment downtown at $1,000 a night. Is that mitigation or not? So these things have to be taken into account. So the vendor is in breach of the contract. It's not their fault, but they're still in breach. Buyer says, well, I suffered loss, but hey, two, you can't probably prove what that loss will be based on just the idea that, hey, I suffered loss, I should be compensated. What is your compensation? The idea of mitigation is there. The other idea of mitigation in terms of loss and consequences as well is the idea of reasonable loss of expectation of gain. What could the buyer have gained? What did they lose? So if at the time in which the breach happened, what could they have lost? So quite often the reasonable thing they do is look at the contract price and what is the value of the property at the time in which the breach occurred. Probably there's a month or two, maybe, in terms of normal resale market. The property didn't probably go up or down, and in fact, it probably went down because of the market. So the buyer has to be beware. You don't just get whatever you ask for. Okay.
And Shirley?
Okay. Yes, my comment here is this. No matter what, we always try to save the transaction. And tenants not moving out can occur at any time, not necessarily during, the COVID times. We've faced these issues, even before COVID. So in terms of how do we save the deal, I will firstly look at who am I representing, the vendor or the buyer? And also looking at the market situation. What's the state of the market right now? Has it gone up? Has it gone down? In whose favor has it gone in favor of? Now, three possible solutions, very practically. We can extend the transaction until the tenant moves out. The buyer, if he really wants the property, he can actually assume the tenant. The vendor, if he really wants to sell, and this actually is a solution that I'm working with right now. If you really want to sell, money talks. I have a situation where the seller has offered the tenant a sum of money to move out. And they're in the negotiation part right now as to how that's going to come about. Another practical solution, and I'm not just tossing this out, but sometimes maybe both parties should consider maybe an adjustment of the purchase price to represent the lost opportunity or to avoid extended litigation. So that's a possibility. So in terms of how I deal with tenants, I approach it very practically. And if indeed my client is the purchaser and he's not prepared to do any of these, then basically the vendor has breached their obligations to provide a vacant possession. And we can tender and then see what flows from there.
Okay. So great. Oh, okay, Ivan.
One other point I want to make out is the idea that what are the remedies that can be available to the buyer. They're unlikely to be able to, if the buyer really wants this property and really wants it to be vacant, one of the things a term that has been thrown around is that you can hear about and people talking about is something called specific performance.
Yeah.
Can you force the deal to go through? Can you later on make the seller sell the house back to you later on when all the situation has changed? it's pretty unlikely. It's very hard because the property has to be so unique that there's no other alternative replacement property that the buyer can actually use as a substitute. And that's pretty hard to get that uniqueness down to a point where you can actually force the seller to sell later on down the line. So if you really, really want that property, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer out there, work at these reasonable steps between you and the seller, as those great ideas that Shirley had mentioned about how to deal with this practically.
Great. So, Stephen, on your side, do you have any questions before? Because we have so many Americans buddies over here, so you know, like.
No, I don't have any private, but I think there is a question if you scroll up to the second last one.
Yeah, actually, is it Garrick? Garrick, you got something? Garrick, okay, we have California people, you know, like we have so many Hawaii, we have so many of our buddies over here. So, you know, like we can just share. This is not just about Canada, you know, like US as well. So maybe Garrick, you want to share with us about, you know, your situations over in San Francisco and things like that. Garrick Yang is from our area in San Francisco.
We have just a lot of challenges as well, especially just hearing the conversations about tenants, you know, tenants being affected by loss of income, landlords being stuck, you know, cannot collect, cannot evict, cannot, you know, do things. And, you know, we're given reassurance by our government that we could have forbearance or, you know, delay, but even those terms are different from servicer to servicer. So we share a lot of unknowns and challenges as well, just like in Canada.
Yeah. So did I hear anything that California is now trying to, you know, like force a law and things like that about 25% reductions on rent? Or somewhere in California, I can't remember. I was reading.
I haven't heard that, but maybe a moratorium on rent increases, like a rent freeze. So, you know, it's harsh because it's you know, controlling the landlord, but you know, at the time like this, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense that a landlord be increasing rent either. We all understand you know, economics, but we also have to have some humanity too.
They are trying to have the Bay Area reduce 25% of the thing. I think CAR NAR is working on stopping it. I know our local Sacramento is trying to stop that
proposal.
That proposal. There's a number on it. I'll send you the link on it, Tina, for that.
Great.
For the 25% rent decrease thing. I'll send you the link through Messenger.
Sure.
Right.
You know,
This
like
is,
we can all share.
This is
Amy, our ARIA
Hi,
president-elect.
Hi. A lot of
Amy would know more.
my Canadian friends here. My goodness. So, hi, nice meeting you, Stephen. Okay, so that 25% rent reduction is proposed by our crazy people down in Sacramento, which is our headquarters to the entire California. So that is a proposal on the table, and ARIA is working closely with our California Association of Realtor and same as the National Association of Realtor to try to get that done. And of course, there are many different legislature coming up, starting from California and ripple down to the rest of the country. So so far, what I've heard from Canada, Vancouver, you guys are still in very good shape. So, but that's something that what ARIA is all about. You know, we would fight for whatever that will help the AAPI homeownership rates. Yes.
Yeah.
Correct. Shirley.
Good. Yes, something I would like to share is that I know we're focusing more on residential right now, but the situation with commercial leases up in Ontario, it's beginning to rear itself. A lot of commercial tenants have been unable to pay their April rental as it becomes due on April the 1st. Up in Canada, once you don't pay commercial rent for 15 days, the landlord has the right to lock you out. And that's what's been happening. I don't know how much longer the lockdown will be. But if this progresses, unfortunately, we will see a lot of small businesses lose their place, and it's become quite concerning for a lot of the small businesses in Ontario right now. It's more dire for them, at least for the residential tenants. They have been given some reprieve because there are no evictions based on non-payment of rent, but not the same kind of protection has been extended for our commercial tenants.
And Ivan?
Yeah, I'd like to comment a little bit more like Shirley, that issue has been coming up quite a lot in the last month or so.
Yeah.
I have quite a number of landlord clients who are now, we're negotiating with the tenants' lawyers to find a result that's amenable to both. Instead of having a vacant property with no rent whatsoever coming in, partial rent. Similar to how loans and banks are allowing deferrals, I have some landlord clients who are deferring part of the rent. It's not that it's forgiven. It's just that whenever everything's over, we can not charge you. We're not going to call this a breach of the lease. We make an agreement. Some of my landlord clients have a look at their mortgage payments and say, hey, at least you pay my costs. You almost like pay the triple net part, but okay, forego on the basic rent part, at least for a month or two. And making arrangements that are reasonable. Like we'll do that for 3 months and we'll look at it again later on. Those are being reasonable and trying to accommodate both parties. If for a landlord who relies on the rental income, that's a bit difficult. If that's all they have in terms of how they make the money, then vice versa for tenants as well. One of the things that I started to look for on leases, which I drafted with clients, is whether they have a force majeure clause attached or not. Now, I put that on the chat room and chat box as to a concept that you don't normally find in real estate contracts, but it's starting to be there now. The idea is that you have a provision that allows a notice to be given at a certain time frame. If there is a pandemic, for example, which is a normal kind of peril, which is found inside these clauses, which allows either the suspension or the obligations for a certain time frame, or even its cancellation of obligations altogether. So these exist, and they are quite, you can find them in a lot of commercial leases. You don't find them a lot in purchase residential at all, period, even in nowadays. So that's an important concept to look at.
Okay, so Stephen, is there
there's a question from Linda to Shirley. Shirley, what was the time period for commercial rent default?
15 days, if not otherwise stated in the commercial lease.
Okay, maybe I could share a little bit my own experience that in commercial real estate. Our firm does quite a lot of commercial real estate. We're actually getting a lot of our bigger landlords in Toronto. They're actually reaching out to tenants to offer them.
Okay, got it. It was all of a sudden like,
yeah,
your mic.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of bigger landlords out there been reaching out to the smaller tenants and waiving their fees or even giving them a 50% discount. That's what we've been seeing probably in the last 3 weeks. Came across my desk, probably I've seen about 90 deals like that where the landlord actually initiated the chat with the tenant. So I think if you're a landlord or a tenant right now, maybe that's a conversation you should have with your landlord.
Great. So another thing that I want to, since we are in a little bit of the commercial space, James, are you here? James Wen, our national president. Hello.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, my
good.
phone computer shut down.
Sorry. So since we're in the commercial space and James is in the commercial world in US, do you see any of this, like the rent situations and then, whatnot? Can you share a little bit with us about what is going on in California or just commercial in general in US?
Yeah, so everything that you've been saying has been also happening in the US, where we were all very curious what would happen April 1st. And like many people did not pay. We across the board, a lot of our large landlord just showed that maybe 30 to 40% of the tenants just did not pay. or they sent a letter about asking for deferments or adjustments. So many commercial real estate products are working it out, mostly on the retail, and even some industrial. A lot of times we just have to work through it, but there was no forbearance or anything else except for the tenants. But the payments and everything else, it kind of trickled to the banks, where now we're negotiating with the banks, trying to get some help also on these type of projects. So right now, as you can probably see with a lot of stocks and a lot of large portfolios of commercial real estate, it's being affected in a very big way, that you don't have the protection like the residential. So everyone is actually looking at probably defaults and everything happening in the commercial sooner than the residential this year.
So do you see that there will be a lot of opportunities to buy the commercial? I mean, obviously you need a lot of money to buy. Doesn't matter how much they drop. But do you see a lot of, which area that you see in US that may be, potential good buy later on?
Yeah, well, the hard problem is the finance, the banking needs to get back online too, because that's the issue, that there's so much uncertainties. The financiers and a lot of banks or capital markets are not functioning well right now. And they would rather not lend at all, or make it very hard to lend. So the people that already have money can buy the opportunities, but the ones that are looking for financing probably cannot get it.
Are we going back to
right
2008 situation? Are we going back to like 2008
there's a lot
lending?
Yeah, well, there's so much uncertainty. People they don't have a good grasp on it. They just know that there will be opportunities, but the problem is, can you finance it? Can you get these opportunities done? And the most affected are where people congregate and what's being shut down, like the retail, student housing, senior housing. The ones that are not as impacted are data centers, medical situation, medical office, medical buildings, hospitality, very hard, because some of them are coronavirus centric, right? Being protective and the distancing, and also being sensitive to the economic downturn, which we're all feeling there's going to be a global downturn or a reset, or maybe kind of a W, right? Going down again. So right now, the thing is, everyone's being very cautious. Everyone's saving their powders. Everyone's making costs. Everyone's trying to work it out, deferring whatever they can, to make sure that once everything stabilizes, we can kind of get back to kind of a new normal of certainty of how are we going to come out of this. But on the commercial real estate, we are a little more worried because there is no grants, government bailouts, and protection on commercial real estate. So I'm hearing the same thing in Canada.
Yeah.
So once we get this, I mean, like, hopefully we can, like US is opening up a lot faster, looks like, because you guys are talking about, end of the month or maybe sometimes in May, you're going to start opening up. So Canada, we don't know yet. So we will see how this play out, because your economy, obviously the China and the US economy is the world is looking at it. It's basically it's US and China's economy, and how this will affect ours. So Ivan, share with us.
I'd like to add a little bit is that, normally in most insurance contracts, pandemics are not a covered peril. It's not like an earthquake, and it's not like fire or physical damage to properties, rental premises, so rent can be prorated. That doesn't happen, but there are some insurance companies, I think now, are developing products that are applicable, but you can't buy pandemic insurance. And unfortunately, you think it's a loss of rental income, and you look at your rider and your insurance, it doesn't cover it. So unfortunately, but there are different insurance products that can help in some other areas and aspects. So the idea is that right now more than ever, it's important is to look at the insurance products that are available. It's probably too late to look at your contract that you have already gotten for your insurance. But going forward, it's certainly something to think about.
Okay, great. So we have 5 minutes to go. Any other questions, or else, we can also talk about, like the pre-sale, the constructions, assignments, is there any assignment issues that is going on? You know, like some of the people, they pay obviously higher, trying to, you know, flip the property for assignment, and now in these situations, do they want to get out and walk away? So Ivan, do you see that?
I not in this little time period. Mostly, if there's that situation, it's not for someone who's trying to assign, trying to sell it in the market. It's just that they have problems when it comes to a spouse or a family member who is out of work, and how can they afford this? On the anticipation that they're going to be able to afford that rent, they'll pay for the mortgage payments as well as find a tenant. But that reasonable prospect you're completing now with no expectation that maybe you'll be able to afford the mortgage payments, and that's hard on a lot of buyers in pre-sale markets. But I haven't seen many people who intentionally were thinking about buying these things in order to find an assignment market for their pre-sale.
And Shirley?
No, I'm not finding any issues there.
Okay.
I'm not finding any issues with assignments. In fact, I am seeing a few more assignments these days.
Right.
So I don't think the COVID has impacted that part of the market at all.
Okay, great. So we have Winston, who is the big boy in Toronto, representing Tridel. Is there any things that you can share with us that you see?
Well, first, echoing both lawyers, we were talking about a commercial challenge too, but I think Canada also announced a commercial rent relief to the small and business side, small and medium-sized business. Have you two hear anything about the specific about this type of assistance?
Well, what I've heard about it, and I haven't looked at it further, but it's like supplementing in small businesses that are business owners about the wage, helping cover some part of the cost in which to pay their employees. There's a certain, I believe the reduction of income has to be like a 15% reduction of income in order for them to qualify for that wage subsidy part.
Right.
I think the wage.
Yeah.
No, I'm referring to the new one that he did. Justin Trudeau announced it yesterday. It's the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance that was announced yesterday. And I think
what they're working on right now is from the federal and the provincial level. They're actually working out because every province is apparently different. I'm actually posting a link on the chat right now.
Yeah.
Actually, it explains it pretty well about this. They don't have the exact numbers yet,
right.
Yeah.
but they're more looking at about the $10,000 range for rent for small businesses.
Right. Yeah. So in terms of the developer side too, are we affected? Yes, but not as big as what we anticipated. Construction front, we're still ongoing because we were fortunate, like real estate agent, we are essential service, and as long as it's Ontario, we have a growth-based permit, and we be able to still continue. And having said that, of course, we still needed to go to extra precaution, like what you do on a daily basis. And in terms of the construction protocol, the sanitization, the safety, the ability to get worker to work safely in a safe environment too. We were fortunate because of our strength and experience that we were quite advanced on that protocol anyway. So we would selected to be one of the few builder that still can continue. But in the long run too, that will be predicated on, you know, maybe the supply side too, the number of workers, no matter how safe we were, the psychological factor, if our team member decide not to work or unit member decide not to work, we just have to respect that. And I think for us in an organization, what we focus on right now is the health and safety for our team member, our purchaser, and our partner, like here. So on that note, we are still operating approximately 80% of our construction forces. In terms of the closing to Shirley, actually what Shirley was saying too, because we have Therian, and then our customer care, the brand experience team, actually doing the pre-delivery inspection on behalf of the purchaser, and because of the assurance of Therian and by our own company too, purchaser also continue to take occupancy. So on that note, we were grateful, and the long-term effect, we don't know, but in immediate, we are still okay. And sales size, we move it basically all virtual now. We do have a couple of sales team members here too, together with Stephen. We still move our sales operation virtually. And we also still continue to do sales too. We just did a deal last week, totally virtual. So we kind of brace for impact, but we don't really see the impact yet. But having said that, it's still too early to see whatever you see on the market too. And I think it's only a measurement of the strength of the restriction, not necessarily the true dynamics of the market. So yeah, so what we do is to just stay put and make sure everybody is healthy and get ready when everything back to normal.
Okay, great. So we really appreciate everybody's, great informations we've been getting, on the chat room, saying that great contents and things like that. So whoever are not our ARIA member yet, join us. We would like to get more of this content, especially right now. When we're all at home and get all these, like global, we get all the global people here so we can all learn from each other. We're going to send out, information about our, the link to join if you're not our members yet, so that, like right now it's like $25, like, yes, it's US dollars, but then, you're going to be able to join our Global Luxury Summit virtual one. This first time that is going to be on 29th from 12 p.m. PST to 2:30 PST. So, join us, and then there will be a lot more for you to learn. It will be the best $25 you could ever invest in yourself. And for that 2.5, just for that 2.5 hours. So Garrick and James and everybody else, Amy and Don Pinguero, you guys are here. Anything else? Want to say something before we wrap it up?
Our honorary Canadian, Don, please.
Yeah, I just want to say hello to all my Canadian friends. We miss you. Can't wait to be back in Toronto and Vancouver soon enough. Summer's here. Hopefully we can loosen things up for our travel and get the ARIA family back together again very soon.
Great, thank you, appreciate it. So Amy, we will see her later on because we cannot see her face, and she is going to be our 2021 national president. And James, has he gone? And he's our current one, so as you know. So thank you very much, everybody. We have this in recording, so we will send this to every single one of us here, so you can share it and then, like, just check it out. Everything's all again. Thank you so much, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Right. Thank you. See you all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.